Ever feel like you're drowning in data when trying to figure out how your software team's actually doing?
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling. It's like, where do you even start? So much data, but what does it all mean?
Right. Mountains of numbers, but how do you actually use them to make things better?
I think everyone listening has been there.
Exactly. So, in this deep dive, we're going to explore something called persona-based metrics.
Sounds intriguing.
It's a way to cut through the noise and focus on what actually matters for different roles in engineering.
So instead of everyone staring at the same giant dashboard and feeling overwhelmed,
Right, or just ignoring it altogether.
exactly, each person gets the specific insights they need to do their job better.
Love it. And this approach, by the way, was created by Adeeb Valiulla. We'll be looking at some of the recommendations from his work on persona-based metrics for Harness Software Engineering Insights, or SEI.
Okay, so SEI as our foundation here.
Got it. So tell me more about these personas. Who are we talking about? Well, you've got your executives and CTOs, right? They're the ones setting the big picture strategy.
Right, the folks at the top.
Then you've got directors who are overseeing teams and processes, and of course the engineering managers who are right there in the trenches with their teams getting the work done.
Makes sense. And what about those who keep those sprints running smoothly?
Oh yeah, can't forget about them. The program managers and Scrum Masters making sure that agile engine keeps humming. And then, of course, you've got your product managers who are aligning everything with the business goals.
All right, so quite a few different players involved in this software development game, and each one needs a different view of the playing field, so to speak.
You got it. So let's start at the very top. With those executives and CTOs, what are the key metrics that they should be paying attention to?
At that level, it's all about the big picture. Business impact,
Huh?
overall engineering efficiency, and making sure things are moving in the right direction.
Okay, so what numbers can actually tell that story?
The DORA metrics are a great place to start. DORA, which stands for DevOps Research and Assessment, it gives you 4 crucial indicators: lead time for change, deployment frequency, change failure rate, and mean time to restore.
Okay, let's break those down a bit.
Sure. Lead time for change is basically how long it takes for a code change to go from, a developer's commit all the way to production.
So how fast can we actually get stuff out the door?
Right. Deployment frequency is pretty self-explanatory. How often are you releasing code? Are you deploying multiple times a day, once a week, once a month? This tells you something about your team's agility.
Got it. And what about those inevitable hiccups?
That's where change failure rate comes in. It's the percentage of deployments that cause problems in production.
Ah, so it's a measure of how smoothly things are actually running.
Exactly. And then you've got mean time to restore, which is all about how quickly you can bounce back from those issues.
Because even the best teams have things go wrong from time to time.
That's right. It's not about if something breaks, but how fast you can fix it.
DORA metrics give those executives a really good overview of how the engineering organization is performing.
It does. But it's not the only thing they should be looking at. They also need to keep an eye on business alignment.
Okay, so what does that mean in this context?
It's about understanding the balance between essential maintenance work, keeping the lights on, so to speak, and new development that drives the business forward.
So are we spending too much time fixing old stuff and not enough time building new stuff?
Exactly. Executives need to know if the engineering effort is actually pushing the needle on things like revenue growth or strategic goals.
Otherwise, you might have your best engineers stuck in maintenance mode when they should be building the future of the company.
Exactly. And another important metric for executives and CTOs is the Trellis score trends.
What's that all about?
It's a really helpful way to measure overall engineering effectiveness. Think of it as a single score that gives you a holistic view of how productive and impactful the engineering team is. It's something Harness SEI uses to provide that overall picture.
Makes sense. Anything else they should have on their radar?
Yeah, taking a look at PR cycle time at a high level can also be really useful. It gives them a sense of how efficient the development pipeline is overall.
So are things flowing smoothly from code to production, or are there bottlenecks somewhere?
Precisely. Now, you might be thinking, how often do executives really need to be diving into all these metrics?
Yeah, they've got a company to run.
Right. The recommendation is to review these metrics monthly and quarterly. It aligns with their strategic planning cycles, and it lets them spot trends without getting bogged down in the day-to-day.
Makes sense. So they're looking for those big sweeping changes, not the tiny little blips.
Exactly. Now, what actions might an executive take based on these insights? Well, they might set quarterly KPIs based on those DORA metrics, like improving lead time or reducing the change failure rate.
So using those numbers to set some concrete goals.
Absolutely. And they'll definitely want to use that business alignment data to make sure that the engineering strategy is supporting the overall business objectives.
So making sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction.
Yep. And if they see that mean time to restore is consistently high, that's a red flag.
Uh-oh, what does that mean?
It means they need to invest in improving system resilience. Maybe they need to look at their incident response processes or invest in better monitoring tools.
So DORA, business alignment, and Trellis score trends. Those are the big three for executives.
You got it. Now let's move down a level and talk about directors.
They're the ones managing teams and processes, so their needs are going to be a bit different, right?
Exactly. For directors, the focus shifts towards team performance and figuring out how to make those processes more efficient.
Okay, so what does that look like in terms of metrics?
PR cycle time becomes really important at this level.
Now, we talked about that for executives too, but I imagine directors are looking at it with a different lens.
Absolutely. Executives use it as a high-level indicator, but directors will want to drill down and understand why the cycle time might be high or low for particular teams or projects.
So they're trying to figure out where the bottlenecks are.
Exactly. Are there enough reviewers? Are certain types of code changes taking forever? They'll also be keeping an eye on unapproved PRs.
How does that tell them?
A high number of unapproved PRs could mean that there are quality issues or that the team needs clearer coding standards.
So it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine for potential problems.
Exactly. And then there's coding days per week.
What's that about?
It's a way to get a sense of developer engagement and workload. If a team's coding days are consistently low, it could be a sign of burnout, or maybe tasks aren't being distributed evenly.
So it's a good way to spot potential morale or workload issues before they become huge problems.
Right. And at the director level, scope creep also becomes a big factor.
Because it can really throw a wrench into those carefully planned sprints.
Yep. And the director needs to understand how scope creep is impacting the team's ability to deliver on their commitments. And that leads us to the sprint hygiene score.
Oh, tell me more about that one. It sounds intriguing.
It basically tells you how effectively teams are managing their backlogs and tickets. Is the backlog a well-organized, prioritized list, or is it a chaotic mess?
So it's about keeping the digital workspace clean and tidy, just like you would with your physical desk.
Exactly. A good sprint hygiene score means things are running smoothly. And just like at the executive level, business alignment is also really important for directors.
Right, because they need to make sure that their teams are focused on the right things.
Absolutely. They need to understand how the work their teams are doing connects to those larger company goals.
So how often should directors be reviewing all these metrics?
The sweet spot is usually bi-weekly and monthly. This gives them enough information to track progress, make adjustments to processes, and address any problems that pop up.
So for example, if a director notices a team have a really high PR cycle time, they can work with the engineering manager to figure out why and how to fix it.
Exactly. Or they might see a pattern of scope creep in certain projects and realize that they need to work with the product managers to define requirements better up front.
Got it. So it's all about having that right level of insight to keep things running smoothly.
Exactly. And it lets them proactively head off problems before they turn into huge fires.
Okay, let's keep moving down the line. What about those engineering managers who are working directly with the developers?
All right, so for engineering managers, their world is their team.
It's all about making sure their team is operating like a well-oiled machine.
Right. So the metrics they care about are all about efficiency, developer performance, and delivering high-quality code consistently.
Okay, give me some examples.
One of the most important metrics for them is the commit to done ratio.
What does that tell them?
It measures how much of the work the team committed to during a sprint actually gets completed. So did they actually deliver what they said they would?
So it's a direct measure of how well they're executing on their plans.
Exactly. Another key metric is SCM review collaboration.
SCM, that's source code management, right?
Yep. This metric looks at how actively team members are participating in code reviews.
Because code reviews are crucial for catching errors, sharing knowledge, and improving code quality overall.
Right. Engineering managers want to see healthy collaboration happening there. And then there's the SCM rework report.
What's that one all about?
This one can point out areas where there's a lot of back and forth on code changes. It could mean there are issues with the initial design, or maybe the requirements weren't clear enough to begin with.
I've definitely been on projects where it felt like we were building the same thing 3 times over because of unclear requirements. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, rework is the worst. It just kills your momentum. That's why this report is so important for engineering managers. It can help them identify those underlying issues and avoid that rework nightmare.
Okay, so what else are engineering managers looking at?
Well, coding days per week is also relevant for them, but they'll be looking at it broken down by individual developer, not just the team as a whole.
So they can see if any particular developers are overworked or maybe not getting an I2 due?
Exactly. Another crucial metric is first time to PR comment.
What's the significance of that one?
It's about how quickly developers are getting feedback on their code. Faster feedback loops mean a faster development cycle overall.
Makes sense. The quicker you can get feedback, the quicker you can make those changes and move forward.
Exactly. And finally, engineering managers are also tracking team velocity trends.
Is that similar to sprint velocity?
It's in the same family. Sprint velocity is about how much work gets done in a single sprint, while team velocity trends look at the team's consistent output over a longer period of time. It's like, are they delivering at a steady pace or are things all over the place?
So consistency is key.
Yep. Now, because engineering managers are really focused on the day-to-day, they need to review these metrics pretty frequently.
How often are we talking?
Weekly is the recommended cadence. That lets them stay on top of things, identify issues early on, and make those course corrections before they become big problems.
So for example, if an engineering manager sees that the first time to PR comment is super slow for their team, they figure out why and try to speed up that feedback loop.
Right. Or maybe they see that the SCM rework report is showing a lot of churn on certain features. That could be a sign that they need to revisit the coding standards with the team or work with the product manager to clarify the requirements.
Got it. So those weekly check-ins are all about keeping that development engine running smoothly.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to our agile gurus, the program managers and Scrum Masters.
They're the ones who live and breathe agile, right?
Right. They're laser focused on making sure those sprints are healthy and that the delivery process is predictable and efficient.
Okay, so which metrics are their bread and butter?
Sprint velocity is huge for them. It's all about how much work the team gets done during each sprint. They're also keeping a really close eye on scope creep.
We've talked about scope creep before, but I imagine it's even more crucial for these folks who are managing the sprint in real time.
It is. They need to identify unplanned work as it's happening so they can get ahead of it. If new tasks pop up that weren't in the original sprint plan, they need to facilitate a discussion about how to handle it.
So it's all about being super vigilant.
Right. And then there's the sprint hygiene report. We talked about that before. But for program managers and Scrum Masters, it's not just about a general sense of cleanliness. They're using that report to make sure that the backlog is super well groomed with clearly defined user stories and prioritized tasks.
So they're the ones who are actually getting their hands dirty and tidying up the backlog.
Exactly. And they're also looking at the commit to done ratio within the context of each sprint.
So making sure the team is actually finishing what they committed to.
Yeah. And PR cycle time is important for them as well, but they're specifically looking at how quickly code reviews and merges are happening within the sprint timeframe.
So they're making sure that those code reviews aren't becoming a bottleneck that slows everything down.
Right. And another key metric for them is first time to PR approval.
What's the difference between that one and first time to PR comment?
First time to PR comment is all about the speed of initial feedback. First time to PR approval looks at the overall efficiency of the entire review and approval process.
Got it. So it's about how long it takes to get that final stamp of approval.
Exactly. Now, because program managers and Scrum Masters are operating in that sprint world, they need to be checking these metrics pretty often.
I'm guessing we're talking daily now.
You got it. Daily and weekly check-ins are essential. They're essentially taking the pulse of the sprint, making sure things are on track, and addressing any little issues before they snowball into big problems.
So if the Scrum Master sees that the sprint velocity is lagging, they can start a conversation with the team about what's causing the slowdown.
Right. And if they notice a lot of scope creep, they can work with the product owner to figure out how to manage those new tasks and keep the sprint on track.
Got it. So their role is all about constant vigilance and course correction.
Pretty much. Now let's talk about our final persona, product managers.
They're the ones who bridge the gap between the business and the development team, right?
Exactly. Their focus is on making sure that the engineering team is building the right things and that those things are delivered efficiently and effectively.
So what are the key metrics that help them do that?
Lead time for change is really important for them because it tells them how quickly new features and improvements are getting into the hands of users.
So they can see how responsive the development process is to their needs.
Right. And they're also looking at business alignment, but from a different angle than executives or directors.
How so?
They're looking at the percentage of engineering effort that's dedicated to building new stuff.
So they want to make sure that the team isn't bogged down in maintenance work and that they have enough bandwidth to deliver those new features that are on the product roadmap.
You got it. And just like the engineering managers, they're also looking at the commit to done ratio.
But again, I'm guessing they're looking at it within the context of those product roadmap goals.
Exactly. They want to see that the team is actually delivering those key features that have been prioritized.
Makes sense. What else are they tracking?
They'll be looking at PR cycle time, but specifically focusing on how quickly new feature code is getting reviewed and merged.
So they're making sure that those new features aren't getting stuck in limbo waiting for approval.
Right. And of course, scope creep is something they're constantly watching for.
Because unplanned work can really throw a wrench into the product roadmap and delay those important features.
Yep. If a sprint that was supposed to deliver a key feature gets bogged down with unplanned work, that's going to impact the overall product strategy.
Got it. So how often should product managers be checking these metrics?
The recommendation is weekly and monthly. That gives them enough insight to track progress on the roadmap, identify potential bottlenecks, and address any issues that pop up.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about a bunch of different metrics, each tailored to a specific role in the software development process.
It might seem like a lot, but it's all about making sure that each person has the information they need when they need it.
Absolutely. Now, I'm assuming that Harness SEI has some dashboards that are specifically designed for each of these personas.
You know it. Harness SEI has done a great job of curating dashboards that are tailored to each role. So, for example, a CTO or executive is going to be spending most of their time in the DORA, business alignment, and Trellis dashboards.
Because those give them that big picture view.
Yeah, exactly. Directors would also be using those dashboards, but they might also dive into the Dev Insights dashboard to get more granular data about the development process itself.
Makes sense. What about engineering managers?
They're going to be living in the Sprint Insights, Dev Insights, and Trellis dashboards. Those give them the team-level insights they need to track performance, efficiency, and code quality.
And Scrum Masters.
Sprint Insights and Dev Insights are going to be their go-to dashboards. They need that real-time view of what's happening in each sprint.
Got it. And last but not least, what about our product manager friends?
They're going to be focusing on the DORA and business alignment dashboards, but they'll be using them to make sure that feature development is on track and aligned with the overall product strategy.
So it's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly. The whole idea behind persona-based metrics is to cut through the data clutter and give people actionable insights that are relevant to their specific role.
It's not about drowning in data. It's about using data intelligently. And this framework, created by Adeeb Valiulla, really helps with that.
It does. And by focusing on the right metrics for each role, teams can avoid that overwhelming feeling of information overload and actually use data to drive continuous improvement.
That's what we all want, right? To keep getting better and better at what we do.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, I encourage you to think about your role and which of these persona-based metrics resonate with you. What could you start tracking today that would give you a new perspective on your work?
That's a great question to ponder. Maybe it's time to check out Harness SEI or do a deep dive into one of the metrics we've discussed today.
Knowledge is power, right?
You got it.
And understanding how to use data effectively can be a game changer for your software development process.
I couldn't agree more.
So what's one metric that you're curious to explore further based on your own role, and how might tracking it change how you view your work?
Think about it, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.
See you then.
Bye.